Hi guys, Alex here from Alexkorp Films. Today I'm going to be talking to you about the Panasonic GH4. Now the GH4 is a camera that I use quite a lot on my shoots, and I find it to be an excellent camera considering its price point. I've seen it lately for as low as $1,200 to $1,300, which is an absolute steal considering all its features, including 4K video. So if you are looking to get into the video market, it is definitely a camera that you should consider. The GH4 is a lightweight mirrorless digital camera with a micro four thirds sensor. Now because of the sensor size, your image is going to be punched in a bit more than it would be on a full frame camera. What does that mean? Basically, as a general rule, you need to take the focal length of the lens you're putting on your 4/3 camera and double it. So a 25mm lens becomes a 50mm lens. Now personally, I don't find this to be particularly limiting, but it is something that you need to be aware of, especially if you're going to go out there and buy some lenses. But the great thing about having a small sensor size is that you can adapt pretty much any lens to the camera. So any of that old glass you've got lying around, you just need to get an adapter for it to the 4/3 mount. You can dust it off and start shooting with it. The GH4 records internally as either an MP4 or an MOV. Now they aren't exactly the greatest codecs in the world, but you can also send a signal out via the HDMI port to an external recorder which can record in a codec of your preference. Personally, I use the Blackmagic Video Assist, which allows me to record in ProRes 422HQ, which is a really good codec to shoot in. Now the thing to note about that is that you can only send out a 1080 signal via the HDMI port. So if you want to get a 4K recording, you're going to have to record it internally via using one of the internal codecs. Now the internal recording records at an 8-bit color depth. However, you can get a 10-bit color depth recording if you send it out via the HDMI. Again, you're going to be limited to only a 1080 signal. But that is a pretty handy way to shoot on the GH4. That's how I usually run my setup. Whilst there are limitations on the codecs that you can record in camera, there are ways of getting around it as well. The GH4 has an inbuilt microphone which is surprisingly good for a DSLR camera. However, it's not good enough to use for professional filmmaking purposes. The onboard preamp, which has a 3.5mm jack input, is not great either. Now, this might all sound pretty doom and gloom, but to be honest, you're going to find this is the case for pretty much all DSLRs across the board. None of them have great audio microphones or audio preamps built into the camera. Now the solution to this is to record your audio externally, and there are some pretty cheap options out there which will allow you to both mix and record your audio externally, thus getting around the problem which is recording audio with a DSLR camera. Now the GH4 comes with a 3.5-inch flip LCD screen, which I found to be a little small when trying to find focus with manual lenses. Now the camera does have a focus peaking function, however I found that to be a little difficult to use when trying to find really precise focus points with manual lenses. So in that case I found that an external monitor was an absolute must. Now I mentioned earlier the Blackmagic Video Assist as an external recorder. It's also a monitor and has excellent onboard features such as histogram and focus peaking, and I find that that pairing works exceptionally well. The The GH4 also allows you to shoot variable frame rates, which can be pretty handy if you want to slow some of your footage down. Now, it caps out at 96 frames per second, but if you're shooting 24 frames per second, that works out to being about quarter speed, which is still a reasonable amount of slow motion, and gives you the latitude to have a bit of play with your speed ramping, if that's something that you want to give a try. The bottom line is this camera is pretty hard to beat at the $1,200 to $1,300 mark. It's packed full of features such as 4K video, and 96 frames per second at 1080p are pretty hard to beat. Now, as I said, there are some drawbacks to this camera, but those drawbacks can be offset by periphery devices, and I guess that's the big thing to take out of this review. If you want to get the most out of your GH4, you are going to have to spend a bit of money on external devices, but trust me, it's worth it, as the results you can get with this camera are absolutely amazing.